Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here with you. I would start off by saying that it's, in a sense, it's quite coincidental in a providential way that someone who has spent a fair, decent amount of his life working with the immigrant is being acknowledged at a point in a moment when the U.S. peace caravan is about to arrive here in Washington, D.C., led by Javier Cecilia and about 110 people on the buses who started off from Mexico, who have spent the past month traveling to 26 different cities with the goal of trying to engage the American public on a conversation of the intimate connections between what is happening in Mexico and the United States. For 35 years, one of the things that I consider myself to have been incredibly privileged for is that being right on the border, it has been possible to be a witness to the phenomena of migration. And because we do welcome many, many delegations to the border. We have many, many universities, many church groups that come down and spend a week, 10 days on the border, have their consciousness raised of what the reality is like. After today, I'm going to be giving a series of lectures at universities up in New Jersey, and I was commenting to someone, I'm willing to bet that I could go into a room full of university students and I could begin my talk this way. You know, I'm actually really grateful that I finally made it here, because when I was about to catch the plane at the airport in El Paso, there was a gun battle that took place there, and it delayed everything and shut down the airport for about a half hour. And I dare say everyone in that room would believe that. They would believe that. They would believe that, yes, it's not unusual for us to dodge bullets. My point in that example isn't so that people understand that we're not dodging bullets. My point in that example is to raise the truth that we in the United States are so disconnected to our involvement in what happens in Mexico. This is what I remember. One of the individuals that stayed in our house many years ago when the flow was that of Central Americans, when the Salvadoreños and the Guatemaltecos were fleeing their country because of civil war and the dynamics of that civil war that are not very different than what is happening in Mexico today, where a great deal of funding was flowing into governments and especially the military. The realization that the death squads were operating straight out of the military. And we received this young man, 22, 23 years old, who had come up after a Salvadorian tank came up over a hill and then aimed its turret and begun to fire. One of the places he hit was his home, and his mom and his siblings were there, and of course it was all obliterated. There happened to be, at that time, Congressman Ron Coleman was the congressional representative from the 16th District of Texas here to Congress, and he would have these periodic town hall meetings. And it was just a normal, ordinary congressional town hall meeting, and for this one, we decided to take him to the meeting, and like all of these town hall meetings, the Congressman stands up and he talks about some of his accomplishments and some of the issues that he's working on, etc. And you need to understand that El Paso historically, even though it is in Texas, and sometimes I need to apologize to people that I come from El Paso in Texas, but I want you to know that El Paso was the only city in the state of Texas that went for McGovern. I want you to know that El Paso went for Sissy Farron-Hall. I want you to know that it votes very heavily for people like Obama. So Ron Coleman was a Democrat, and we went to this town hall meeting, and he said what he had to say, and then it becomes an open mic, and people go up and say, I'm a veteran, and what about this, or I get Social Security, what about this, and etc. There came a moment when this guest of ours stood up, and he spoke no English, so we had to translate. And he went up to the microphone, and this is the way that he asked the question. I want to know why you killed my family. And of course, Ron Coleman getting that question asked that way, like, what are you talking about? What is this? And he repeated again, I'm here because I want to know why you killed my family. At that point, I stepped in to put it in context. As Mr. Congressman, what he wants to know is you have been voting in favor of military support for the government of El Salvador. On this particular day, one of those tanks went to the top of this hill and blew his home apart and killed his family. And so he's here today to ask you, why did you kill his family? And for all that Ron Coleman tried to get out of having to deal with the question, this young man would not leave the question. When you fund it, when you become so intimately connected, the death of my family is something that I must hold you accountable for. I'm happy to say that several weeks later, Ron Coleman sent a letter to all his constituents saying that he could no longer support funds for the military and the government of El Salvador, and from this point forward, he would no longer vote for U.S. assistance to El Salvador. I truly believe that that encounter with that immigrant, whose name he never even found out, had something to do with the change in that position. This caravan, which stayed in El Paso with us for 2 nights as it went through the journey, is coming here tomorrow. This caravan is trying to engage us in asking us to become involved, to respond to the question, when will you join us in speaking honestly about drug policy? When will it become possible for you to simply say the truth, that your drug policy simply has not worked? It hasn't worked in your own country. The difference is you just have so much more money to lock people up and lead you. You have so much more money to try and keep your law enforcement entity less corrupt. You have so much more money to keep your judicial system, your legislative process, your executive structures less corrupt than it is with us. Never in a million years, in 1980 and 85 and 90, never in a million years would I have imagined that the day would come that the stories that we were hearing from the guests arriving to our house from Central America would now be told to us by our neighbors, and our houses are located right on the border. You can walk. I can walk out of an Annunciation house and walk about 10, 11 blocks, and I'm right on the Rio Grande. That they would be telling us what was happening, and it was so incredibly reminiscent. They speak of torture. They speak about the military taking people, weighing down mattresses on top of metal crates with sheets, and then tying people to them and turning on the electricity. This is right next door to us, okay? I'm sure that many of you are familiar with what recently happened with two U.S. CIA agents who are in a U.S. Embassy vehicle going to one of the Navy bases outside of Mexico City that were ambushed by a group of federal police. The reason that is so incredibly embarrassing for the government of Mexico is because it simply brought literally to the very table where the president says the truth that their structures are totally, completely not credible now. He cannot control the federal police. He cannot. The people arriving at our house are not fleeing the cartels. They are fleeing the federal police. They are fleeing the military. They are fleeing the municipal police. They are fleeing the structures that are supposed to govern a nation.